This is Shivai's memory box. These are some of his things, his muslin, his bib, one of his favourite hats. That's been sitting here for 7 years, so the colour is gone. I remember thinking at the time this smelt of him, and I didn't want to wash it. I didn't want to wash that, so I never did.
I left hospital with just this blanket, and I think it was about a month after we lost Lily, and we'd booked a little trip up to Cumbria, and I hid this in my bag and took it with me because I should have still been pregnant and going up with her.
Obviously she hasn't got this teddy because I have it, but she has the same one, which is lovely. I think her one might have been white actually, but they look the same. So that's a really special teddy.
We had been on holiday to the Maldives, and this is his passport, and he's only got one stamp on there. It should have been full of stamps, but there's just one stamp.
We don't really get them out much. It's not often that I look at it or delve through the bag. Personally, because I just don't feel a necessity to, but every now and then when, I don't know, if I'm looking for something and I find it, I do have a little sneak peek.
I don't look at them very often. I have to be in the right frame of mind when I want to look at them, or sometimes I feel a bit emotional where I want to have a good old cry, and then I maybe open this box up and it triggers some stuff that really needs to come out, and that helps me.
And so the lady who did our funeral laminated this for me, so these are the words of what she read in the poem. She said a little poem. Again, we didn't know what we should do. You don't know what you should do for a funeral. So we didn't have any music, we didn't have a lot of people there, we just went up.
So, oh gosh, where would I start? A bit about myself. I'm
a single mum to two boys and a daughter that's not here with us.
I'm African. I came to this country in 1965.
I'm married to Kartik. We have been married for 17 years, and I'm mum to 3 boys. Avi, who is 13, Shivai, who passed away when he was nearly 8 months, and also Kai, who's now 6 years old.
Married my husband in 1967. Had my first child in 1969.
I'm a full-time mum of 4 children, nearly 5 children, and I am a home educator as well.
I'm a makeup artist, a marketeer, and I'm also a Sans ambassador.
I had a stillbirth in 1975. Didn't like the care offered and set about doing things to change it.
It was through that kind of talking about it on social media that led to kind of conversation with Sans and, understanding more about the work that they do and, how they're not just a charity that helps and supports bereaved parents around support services, but they're also trying to save babies' lives where fewer babies die. So Shivai, I found out I was pregnant with him after I'd had 3 miscarriages. It was our last try in trying to conceive naturally.
I always have an inkling that I could be pregnant.
It was my 5th pregnancy, so you kind of know your body by then in terms of, the signs to kind of look out for when you're pregnant.
Your body just changes before you have tests.
Lily was my 2nd pregnancy. I had a 3.5-year-old son already.
Really happy, but also quite nervous because we didn't know if the pregnancy would be viable and it would go through.
Because of having had that stage 6 miscarriages after the birth of my daughter, we weren't as joyous as we might have been, but we were hopeful.
So the pregnancy was fine. This was my 4th pregnancy. I felt like I knew the drill. I knew what to expect. The previous pregnancies had been non-eventful.
I'd only told a close group of people that I was pregnant with Shivai.
We told friends and family as soon as I found out I was pregnant. You don't expect anything to go wrong, and so you have all those hopes and dreams, you know. You have names, you have schools, you know what they're going to do.
All my babies seem to want to be born before my baby showers happen, because my first son came the weekend before my baby shower, and Shivai, I started to go into labour on the night of my baby shower. So, and he was born at 29 weeks.
I think from 16 weeks until the baby's birth at 30 weeks, I was in hospital. They had a policy of not allowing children to visit you on the antenatal ward on any day except a Saturday. So I used to go down to the maternity clinics and get parents to sign a petition to change it, dressed in my cotton nightie.
Getting Shivai home was, it was quite a monumentous occasion. He'd been in hospital for 3 months by then.
We went for the 20-week scan, and there was a few problems. They couldn't find the stomach bubble. They were struggling to find details of the heart.
I was going for a routine antenatal appointment. As the midwife started to look for the heartbeat, she couldn't find it. And at first I didn't think anything of it, because sometimes it does take a little bit of digging around. But then this seemed to go on for a bit too long.
So Shivai had been home since 2015 March. He had been progressing really well in his development. He had regular premature baby checks at the hospital.
I was 30 weeks pregnant. They decided to give me drugs to mature the baby's lungs with a planned caesarean delivery on Monday. This was Friday morning.
They never came across that it was something serious, and we were taken into a room, and they told us that we would have to go to Leeds for a fetal heart scan. Again, everything was played down quite calmly.
He caught his first cough and cold, and I was a little bit nervous about that, so I took him to the doctor's surgery almost like 3 times. The signs were fine and normal, and he then started to deteriorate a little bit more, so I got more nervous and took him back and forth to the hospital and the doctor's surgery, and then he got better.
And then they tried to reassure me, saying, well, at 18 weeks it can sometimes be difficult to detect the heartbeat. Would you like to come back again next week, or would you like to go to the hospital now and have a scan? And I just said hospital.
On Sunday afternoon, the baby was incredibly active. I realised years later, that it was death throes.
So we went to Leeds the following week, and within the space of 20 minutes our lives were just destroyed.
That day I had a regular appointment at the doctor's surgery, so I went anyway, and our surgery is just down the road, and we took him in the car and he was fine, and when we took him out of the car seat he was limp.
When the nurses did their rounds to listen to the baby's heart, they couldn't find one.
They found that she had no stomach, that she had esophageal atresia, which is like either a break or a gap in the esophagus.
They kind of just took us straight through. They were expecting us, did the scan, and just confirmed that the baby had died.
They phoned my obstetrician, who came in to tell me the baby was dead.
So I went screaming into one of the doctor's rooms, and then immediately there was a whole load of doctors around him, all trying to resuscitate him and revive him. And within seconds, for what felt like hours, but I know it was seconds later, the ambulance was there.
If baby survived pregnancy, they wouldn't do an operation on the heart because there were so many other things wrong. And so we had to make the devastating decision to end the pregnancy.
He was in hospital straight away, and they tried to revive him for almost 45 minutes. And then 45 minutes later he was pronounced dead.
We had to have, I think, at least another 2 or 3 scans on that same day to have it confirmed by a number of different medics. So you just hear it again and again, and there's always that hope that someone's got it wrong.
How could a baby go from being so healthy and so normal, like any other premature baby that is developing well and fine, to suddenly dying?
A week later, we had to travel to Sheffield to have an injection to stop her heart beating. I must say, with everything that happened at that time, that part of it wasn't explained to me.
They took the stitch out of my cervix. I was taken down to delivery. My husband was not expected to be there.
And then you're told, okay, well, you now have to deliver your baby. And again, this isn't something that I had ever thought about. I didn't know anyone that had had a miscarriage, or certainly no one had told me that they had had a miscarriage or had to deliver a baby dead.
Having an injection into your stomach, and then carrying her dead for 2 days, was the most traumatic.
They asked me to push, and I said I can't push out death.
There's just numbness in us and shock. And the first thing that came to my husband and my mind was, how on earth were we going to tell his brother?
While all this was going, there's also the things in your head saying, what if they've got it wrong? What if all these diagnoses are wrong? What if we've given up her chance of survival? And even though we had the paperwork, even though we had everything there, you still have those doubts in your head that you're doing the right thing.
Then they put me on the postnatal ward in a side room. And any time I left it, some member of staff would say, "What are you doing here?" Scared of me going near to the big postnatal ward and contaminating or scaring other mothers.
I'm looking at the doctors and I'm like, what happened? Like, give me some answers. What happened here? Nobody could give me any answers.
After carrying her for 2 days, I had to go in to deliver her. And the care at that time, the birth wasn't the greatest. But for me, I felt like I was getting the care I deserved because I had made that choice. I had made that decision to end the pregnancy.
And you read about these things in the newspaper, or you hear about it happening to somebody else, but you never in your wildest dreams think this is ever going to be you.
They were short-staffed, the hospital was short-staffed, there was nobody around, and she was just delivered into chaos. And we held her and we had time with her, but because of the lack of care, I wanted to go home.
Never saw the baby. You weren't told anything about the baby other than the gender. You weren't told what was happening to it. Your assumption was it had gone to an incinerator.
So I've got so many regrets that I didn't spend more time with her, I didn't hold her more, I didn't look at her more, but we felt like that's all we deserved at that time.
It almost felt like we'd been cheated. It felt like we had just been teased with life. Here you go, here's a bit of a taster, but now I'm going to take it away from you.
I didn't tell many of my friends until after I had delivered the baby.
Our closest family and friends knew that, you know, there was problems in the pregnancy.
Everyone is in disbelief. And the more you tell people, every time we told somebody, you know, they were like, how did it happen? And, you know, and that's just a natural thing for someone to say, if you don't mind me asking, how did it happen? But you relive that moment again and again and again and again.
They told my husband to register the death, and the hospital arranged the funeral. But when he came to register the death, there was no space for a first name. There were just space for a surname. They weren't babies.
There was a massive guilt. You know, it wasn't a stillbirth, it wasn't neonatal, it wasn't something that happened. You know, we chose to finish the pregnancy and end the pregnancy, and you feel like you have to explain. You feel like you have to go through the diagnosis. You know, at one point I was carrying the forms from the hospital with all the test results so I could prove to people that she couldn't survive.
Some of it is self-destructive because you start telling yourself that you're that bad person that has made this situation happen. Everybody must be thinking, what on earth has she done, that she's lost a child? You know, she must have done something, or they must have done something.
The responses were really varied. Of course, everybody was shocked, surprised, saddened to hear it. But after that, people deal with grief differently.
One thing that really upset me at the time, another friend said to me, I thought since she named a child was your daughter's best friend. Do you realise they're jeering at her because the baby died?
Some people didn't know what to say after you'd told them. And some people were great. You know, they didn't say anything. They just hugged us.
Some people said comments that they probably thought was helpful.
Have another baby. Well, I'd had 14 pregnancies by then. One friend really upset me. He said, at least you've got one, we haven't got any.
Some are very kind of upfront, like, what can I do?
Bringing flowers, sending us cards of sympathy, making food for us.
One friend, the first thing she said to me was, can I make the baby something to be buried in? And I remember just crying my eyes out because I hadn't even thought about something like that.
I mean, this was really nice that a family member, a friend did this for us. And what was really important is that she put Shivai's name. And that meant a lot to me and my husband because often people forget that we were Shivai's parents. And actually the most upsetting thing is sometimes when you're dismissed for not being that baby's parent, because all you want to do is talk about your baby and you want to say their name or you want other people to say their name. So that was, when I got this, that was like, it was so heartwarming that someone actually even remembered that Shivai was a part of our family and then had kind of created this to interlink us all together. It's really beautiful.
I mean, they came and gave me cuddles and hugs. It's not they didn't come, but they didn't want to talk.
Some people just will be there and talk to you and communicate, but will avoid the subject.
People in the playground would avoid you. They would cross the road to avoid you.
It was part of the least said, soonest known bird. My husband, that was what he was told. If you talk about it, it'd upset her. The fact it would be good to be upset about a dead baby was irrelevant.
I don't know if people actually knew how to talk to us, or if they knew, but it triggered a memory for them.
It's such a huge moment in life that it's weird not to talk about it and to try and avoid it. It's like the elephant in the room. You can't have a normal conversation with someone about the weather when they know 2 days ago you just delivered your baby that had died.
And I think as time went on, it was just something sad that had happened to somebody else.
People spoke about it less and less as time went on. And this was a very small pool of people. Most people wouldn't say anything.
Grief tourists, which is a really good way of explaining it, because it's people that are there for a few weeks or a few months, but then they go on to their own lives and you're the only one that's carrying this grief with you day in, day out.
There's definitely a stigma to be around baby loss.
About 6 weeks after my baby was born, Belle Mooney wrote an article in The Guardian about how she felt after her baby died.
I mean, I know a lot of women, but I didn't know anyone who'd been through it. And that's not because people hadn't been through it, it's because people weren't speaking up about it.
So I sent a letter to The Guardian, I thought one of the others too, and then to every national paper saying, this is how I felt. No one knew what to do or say to me. If you contact me, we'll get a leaflet out to teach staff how to behave.
Sometimes people just don't know how to approach the subject, or how to talk about it, or how to even start that first kind of initial sentence or conversation to break the ice.
And it's because people don't want to speak about it. They don't want to ask you about your loss because they feel uncomfortable with it. You know, they don't know what to say.
And I had hundreds of letters come in, and that really was the beginning of Sounds.
People don't know quite still what I go through because they don't ask me, or they don't talk to me about it, or they don't talk to me about Shivai or acknowledge that I'm still a mum to 3 boys.
When the letters started coming in, I put everything that was mentioned more than once into a questionnaire and sent them back. It was normalising what had happened to me. It made me feel as though what I was doing was healthy.
The way my husband dealt with it compared to how my eldest son dealt with it, to how I dealt with it, we all grieved in very different ways.
And I didn't understand. I just thought that he didn't care as much, you know. But just because he wasn't talking about it, it didn't mean he wasn't thinking about her or thinking about me, you know. And I think it's really hard for relationships after such devastation.
It took us a long time to be accepting of each other and how each other processed things.
I think I'm someone who doesn't dwell too much. That's not to say that it didn't affect me in any way or that I wasn't emotionally connected at all. It's been good being able to educate others, speak about it. And actually, the more I speak about it, the easier it is.
The demand from the woman were for people to talk to, people to write to. So we had our first meeting in 1978.
Initially, I didn't reach for support because I didn't know where to go, to be honest.
For me, I needed to talk to people that understood, and I didn't know where to go and what to do.
So we invited everyone who could to come to us.
And I started to sort of like look on Facebook around, I just put in the hashtag baby loss.
I think just late one night, I just went on the internet.
And tons of posts came up, absolutely tons. That's when I discovered the SANS community.
And I found the SANS website and they had a forum.
I just remember reading everyone's posts and I was just like, I was so shocked by how many people had also been through similar things.
And it just opened me up to this other world. It was all these people that were feeling like I was feeling.
The first meeting we had 60 people show up. Remember, there was no funding. We used to get leaflets out to try and help parents talk to other parents.
I have the greatest friendships that I've formulated as a result from being in that community, and those people who have been able to kind of support me in the biggest kind of ways as well.
And now in my journey, 12 years on, my closest friends are baby lost mums.
It's definitely life-changing. You can definitely learn to live with it. And for me personally, it doesn't hurt me now in the same way as it did a few years ago.
Grief is never ending, but it's ever changing. And they know that you're going to have days that still take your breath away and knock you off your feet.
I think what would have helped me immediately, which I hope isn't necessary for people now, was knowing that I could see and hold my baby.
Had I held on for 2.5 hours, she would have been registered as a stillbirth. So it's that 24-week cut-off that really hurt me the most. I mean, in the eyes of the law, she never existed.
I mean, I wish I knew more about baby loss in general. I didn't know the statistics. I didn't know 1 in 4 miscarry in the first 12 weeks.
And it changes things like your maternity pay, you know, your maternity allowance, having time off.
I didn't know that black women suffer from it more than their white counterparts.
I think one of the things that I wish I'd known earlier was probably that SANS existing.
Felt like the most normal, natural thing. Get pregnant, have a baby. Get pregnant, have a baby. It's unless you know someone that's been through it or you happen to have seen something about it. Why would you know about complications or problems or prejudices or racism or all these things that can occur that can lead to loss?
I'm amazed at the work SANS does. It's really impressive.
I think the biggest thing that's helped me is being able to talk about Shivai in a much more public way, in a way that's comfortable for me to share.
Using my experience to help other people, letting people know that, you know, it's okay to talk about them, it's healthy to talk about them, you know, it's healthy to involve them with your family.
Just having more of that conversation and understanding about the work that SANS do, but it also helps, more importantly, to make that change that we all want to see, where we don't want a baby to die, we don't want a family to be bereaved, you know, we want them to be able to have that future that they yearned and they've dreamed about, and to be able to take their baby home and celebrate all those milestones. So that gives me meaning and purpose and fulfillment in continuing and carrying on.
I think I just wish I was a little bit more aware. Not so that I would have been scared throughout the pregnancy, but knowledge is power, really.
You have a lot of weird, desperate feelings, and one of the things that really help is to normalize your feelings and have them accepted. And that wasn't around at the time. But I like to think we made it around.
once we'd started the support group at Chesterfield, we raised funds for a baby garden, and we raised over £40,000, and we've now got a baby garden up there. So there's a memorial with a teddy and some lovely little words, and it's just where all the baby graves are, so people can go up and sit down and remember their babies in a beautiful place. When you've been through something so devastating, you can never go back to who you were before, but you won't always be who you are now. You know, you will become a different person, but it doesn't mean to say that you're not going to be happy, that you're not going to live life to the full.
It's a unique journey. There's no handbook on it that says this is how you must behave and this is what you must do and this is how you will be able to relive your life again.
Whilst it's painful and horrible to go through some of those things, you can't avoid them, and actually, if you allow it, you can grow from it. You can learn. It can help you to be a better person, more understanding, more gracious, and more giving.